All right, well, welcome back, everybody, to the Big River Podcast. Hope you enjoyed episode 1. Today we're on episode 2. Nathan, I thought we'd do something a little more challenging today. Do you know what that is?
Do I know what it is? Well, yes, I do, because I'm part of this podcast. But if the listener is here, they might not know what it is. Tell us, Brian. What is it?
I was going to say not talk about ourselves.
Yeah. We're going to talk about everything having to do with misconceptions about the video production industry. I'm sure we'll talk about ourselves a bit, though.
I was a little off, but I guess we'll make it work.
So our first one is going to be the difference between hard skills and soft skills, specifically for, I would say, anybody in the filmmaking industry who is looking to challenge themselves. This is a really interesting way of kind of deciding where you might be able to challenge yourself by looking at, have I worked on my hard skills too much recently? Can I go and look at some of my soft skills a little bit more, or vice versa? Some people are a little bit more tuned into those soft skills because it's more natural for them, and they need to push themselves to keep growing in their hard skills. So I think this one will be interesting.
Yeah, I think from a misconception standpoint, I would say the misconception, if you had to distill it down to one sentence, it would be like being a great blank, whether that's filmmaker, cinematographer, director. So being a great blank is all that matters, right? So, and I think that's the core misconception there, that there's so many other skills besides just being, let's say from a cinematographer standpoint, technical skills, being a great cinematographer. There's so many other skill sets out there that go into that process besides just the technicals of understanding lighting, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the typical filmmaker types, I think, really focus on those hard skills and don't do a good job of developing their soft skills along the way. I do think
Why do you
it's
think that
true,
is?
though. Well, I think it's because when you get down to the nitty gritty, if you had to ask me which one is more important, soft skills or hard skills, I would say hard skills are more important. As a director on set, I can kind of troubleshoot somebody who doesn't have the best soft skills ever, if they're not the best team player or if they're not the best at communicating. As a director, I can work around that a little bit, but if they just don't have the hard skill of, say, a DP who just doesn't know how to light something properly, doesn't know what the right tools are to use, that I can't really troubleshoot on set. So I do think that hard skills are the most important. So understandably, I think that's why people focus on them the most. But if you want to really advance your career and really be playing at a more top tier level, you need to start developing those soft skills as well.
Yeah. I think also a big aspect of it is hard skills, technical skills, whatever you want to call them. I think they're more easily practiced on your own. So I think
Yeah.
when you're starting
Yeah.
out and you are exploring your interest in filmmaking, you just go on YouTube and you Google filmmaking. It's all going to be videos that it's all about how to understand lighting, how to understand exposure, how to lens your camera, whatever it might be. And these are all things that you can kind of practice on your own. So there's little fear of failure, so to speak, like when you're starting out. So you can kind of build a lot of these skills and you can level them up quickly. And then the soft skills don't really start to develop and come to play until you have more opportunities to work on set and you realize, oh, filmmaking is a collaborative process. I've got to work with other people.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting what you said. As a director, you were like, technical skills are important because you can troubleshoot somebody who doesn't have soft skills, right? But that is interesting because that's relying on you having those soft skills.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you're in
exactly. Which is
charge,
what a director is oftentimes hired for, is their ability to have the soft skills to be the connective tissue between the entire team and the creative vision and making sure everybody is, on the same boat heading in the same direction. So
yeah, it just kind of
that is part of
underscores
the
the
gig.
importance of having soft skills when you're in a leadership position on set, because if you find yourself in that position and you don't have those skills, and you find yourself maybe with other crew members who also lack those skills,
Mhm.
then there's no one really to pick up the slack, and that's where things can start to break down a little bit, and things can
Correct.
feel
Yeah. Yeah.
like things aren't going your way.
Yeah. I want to challenge something that you said a minute ago that that it's harder to work on soft skills before going on set, or that on set is the place where you're going to learn hard skills. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that there are a lot of things that people can be doing to, increase their soft skills before going on set. It's maybe harder to practice them in real life. Like,
Yeah,
you can
that's I
set
think
up
what I
lights in
meant.
your
Yeah,
bedroom. You can figure out how to, make a key light work really well just in your home. But there are certainly ways to increase your ability to listen deeply to other people, to be a little bit more empathic towards, filming days are stressful. So somebody might not necessarily be the most open to criticism if you're, too critical of them. And you can begin to think about how you can approach some of those things on set before you even walk into set.
yeah, and I think
I know
some
for
people
me,
also do have a natural gift for those things
oh, for
right
sure.
away
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think that another important thing is to understand what your talents are. Do you have people skills and being kind of self-aware? Because
Yeah,
to your point,
yeah.
it is a very collaborative process, and
Mhm,
people that are working in the creative industry, the filmmaking, they're no matter what the position, they're all in some shape or form creative people. And so they
mhm,
all want to feel like they have
mhm.
input into a
Yes,
project.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. Yeah.
if somebody expresses an idea that, they're down the chain a little bit, let's say you're in the leadership position, they express an idea to you, and maybe it's a good idea, but maybe it's an idea that is not going to work for one reason or another. You have to have the ability to kind of break it to them that maybe this idea isn't going to work or whatever it is
Mhm,
in a in a
mhm.
in a way that doesn't offend them and lower the morale, right?
Yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of speaking to what
yeah,
you were talking about.
yeah, yeah, and I think the right way of doing that is giving them the bad news sandwich if it's not a good idea, and I think anybody in the process should absolutely be open to any of the ideas that might come up on set. But you do have to be careful because you can't just run down every single rabbit hole that might be plausible to go for. But giving people the bad news sandwich, starting by being a little bit empathic with them, saying, oh, that's a really great idea. I'm really glad that you took the time to think about that. Here are some reasons why I don't think that'll work, but thank you so much for giving me that idea. And if you have any other ideas, I'm actually very curious to know what they are because I think this is a good idea, but we just don't have time to pursue it right now. And I think, giving them that bad news sandwich, good news, bad news, encouragement to keep thinking about other possible scenarios that they can share with you so that you're not totally shutting down that line of communication is a great way of going about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so communication, huge soft skill. Do you have any
Yeah.
others? I've got a couple written down.
Yeah, I think for me, one question that I have for you is, are there any soft skills that took you quite a while to learn as you were coming up in the industry?
I think there's a lot of skills that I feel like you never really completely master and you can always get better at. I think a big one that was, I think, still developing today is learning how to effectively communicate your vision.
Mhm,
And I think this applies for directors and also cinematographers. On a cinematographer level, I think you have to be able to communicate feedback for what you want to see from your crew. Like if you want a particular change to the lighting or lighting ratio or a particular visual style, you
mhm,
have to be able to, one, sell that vision to the director or to the production company or whomever might be considering hiring you. You have to be able to
mhm,
express why your vision and your approach would be unique and help this stand out and help the story. So that's a big thing. And I think also when I think about you and I, we spend a lot of our time pitching to ad agencies, and it
mhm,
has taken us, I feel like, years of developing an effective treatment format to
Mhm.
be able to
Mhm.
effectively sell the big creative idea to people. And that's something I feel like has been probably more difficult to refine than technical skills. And it's something that I feel like we could always improve on, is like expressing your vision in fewer words, especially so that you can communicate it quickly and concisely and not have this big, long 60 slide deck that maybe someone's going to get
Mhm.
exhausted going through, right?
Sure,
So that's
sure.
always, I feel like that's something that has been particularly challenging, especially as
Mhm.
somebody who's not particularly outgoing.
Yeah, you're more I mean, I think you're more of an introverted person.
Yeah, for
One
sure.
thing I noticed that you do a very good job of that I think if anybody is a little bit more introverted, but still needs to be able to show up with those soft skills, is think about ways that you can actually kind of reduce your need to use some soft skills on set by just doing your homework beforehand. So for
Sure.
instance, Brian, you do a really good job of making sure that every person who's in the lighting department that you're leading knows exactly what is going to go on in any particular day that we're filming. And you have the great lighting diagrams, you're talking with everybody beforehand. You know in your head exactly what all of the lighting setups are going to be like, so that when we get to filming day, there's actually less communicating and needing to use some of those soft skills, and that's always really helpful because anywhere you can kind of shave the need to go there, especially if it's something that you're not naturally going to want to spend time on or energy on during the day. It's very helpful and can really speed the process up during the day.
Yeah.
But I feel like you do a very good job at that.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
important to I would rather give people too much information in the pre-production process and
Mhm.
then make changes once things are, because you always have to kind of think on your feet. So go in with a
Absolutely.
certain determined approach and then adjust accordingly, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah. Good. Well, I think anything else on hard skills and soft skills, but if not from you, I would really be interested in going over to our next one.
Yeah, a couple other ones I wrote down, and I think this is another
Yeah.
one that again you probably don't get too much experience with until you start doing things, and
Hmm.
that's time management and specifically
Huge.
estimating time
Huge. Yeah.
and how long
Yeah.
something is going to take you to do.
Hmm.
Because I mean, how many times when you're working on set, you hear like, "Hey, we would like to make this little change, or we need to swing a light or do whatever." How long
Hmm.
is somebody's gonna? The first thing they're gonna say is, "How long is that gonna take?" And if you say, it'll take us 5 minutes," and then it takes you 30 minutes, uh, that's a huge red flag. Then somebody's going to say, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Or,
Hmm.
you're going to start to erode the crew's confidence in your abilities because you can't properly estimate how long something takes. So I think
Sure.
that's a big skill too.
Yeah, that's massive. I think my mind immediately snaps to a project that you and I worked on when it was our first big, I would say, production that had a sizable budget for a significant crew, and we were filming in a convenience store location, but the store was only going to be closed down for extremely specific amount of time. It was like 6 p.m. until maybe 6 a.m. So it was an overnight shoot. And we had something like 30 or 40, I don't remember exactly how many, 30 or 40, an insane number of shots to get done in this store. And for time management, it was kind of about a worst case scenario that you could come up with, but we did so much work on the front end. We created entire 3D model of the store that was exact to the actual store in terms of the size and shape of everything. We dropped the camera in, we knew exactly where the camera was gonna go down to, like, the inch in the store, and for every single
Yeah,
shot,
there
we
was
knew
so many
exactly where all the
shelves that
lights
were
were gonna
like
be.
baked into the floor space that we couldn't move. So we had to know
Yes, and you
exactly
knew
where we could
yeah,
fit the cameras here and there.
yeah. Yeah.
full scale
And I think we
animatic.
narrowed it down to having like 15 to 20 minutes per shot or something like that as we were going throughout the night. And it was really helpful to know exactly how much time you had on each shot and exactly what time of the night those shots were going to take place because we just had no like room for error. And on my director's notes, it literally said, shot 7C going to be from 9:50 to 10:10. And, when 9:50 comes, you're getting at it. And when 10:10 comes, like, okay, did we get a usable take? Yes, we did. Okay, we're on to the next thing. We're not getting additional backups. And we shot the whole thing. We had to modify a couple shots at
Yeah,
the
we had
end
to
of the
make some
night,
sacrifices. Yeah.
but we still got through everything
Yeah.
and had a great piece at the end.
Yeah. And so to tie that into the whole time management thing, imagine you're in that situation where you have 15 to 20 minutes a shot and you say, oh, I want to make this change. And you only have 15 to 20 minutes to even get the entire shot. And you say, how long is
Mhm,
that change going to make? How long is that change going to take? It's so important to know if that change is going to take you 15 minutes, then don't make that change or find a better way to do it and achieve that result. If it's going to take 5 minutes and you know it's going to take 5 minutes, then you say, okay, now we're down to 10 minutes to 15 minutes of actually getting the shot after this change. Because if you say 5 minutes and it takes 10, and then you have only 5 minutes to get your shot off, and then you run 10 minutes over, now that's 10 minutes cut into the next 15-minute window, and it just starts to cascade down the line, and
mhm.
before you know it, you're running hours behind, and it's, not a place you wanna be.
No, definitely not. Uh, yeah, I like that one. Time management's huge, and on set, your brain has this plays this trick on you where it wants to tell you that everything is going to be quicker than it's actually going to be, and over time, you'll learn to actually be way more accurate with your
Yeah,
time estimates. But
yeah.
yeah.
So I think to tie that all up, if you're starting out, don't just focus solely on technical skills. Think about all the other soft skills that you need to develop to be in a leadership position. And then I think at the end of the day, the biggest core thing and the biggest takeaway, I think, is to just be a
Mhm.
good, positive, helpful person on set. Because even if you have the
Yes.
greatest amount of talent and
Mm.
can create great looking images, if you're a terrible person to work with, or you don't have the skill sets to work well with others on set, people are going to find the person that does. So don't rely solely on your talent in creating images or creating
Mhm.
interesting pieces.
Alright, so moving on to our second, um, main misconception, which is portfolio visibility, and I think within this category, there's 2 main things that we want to talk about. One is the misconception that when you look at somebody's portfolio, that is indicative of 100% of the work that they do, the style of work that they do. And the second thing that I think would be interesting to unpack a little bit is some of the misconceptions that you might have if you're maybe somebody on an agency side or a client side, just really anybody who's looking at a creative's portfolio and maybe trying to make a decision who they want to work with or if this is the right person to work with, some of the misconceptions that can come into play there. So, Brian, why don't you start by maybe unpacking a little bit this idea
Mm.
that when you're looking at a portfolio, what you're seeing is, indicative of that entire person's
Yeah, I think
body of
this is a
work.
misconception that I think maybe lot of young people might fall into when they're looking at getting into the industry. I think it's a natural thing to do to go out and say, let me find filmmakers that do this particular kind of work that I'm interested in and to look for inspiration and what, other people, yeah, it's a little bit of soul searching of like, what kind of content do I want to make, right? And so you might find somebody and their
Mhm.
portfolios full of, all these great dream projects that you could see yourself working on one day. So I think the misconception is when you look at somebody's portfolio, you say, "Oh, this is all they do. They just spend all their time, if it's, travel work or whatever, they have all these, lifestyle travel pieces. They must spend all their time traveling around the world." But I think the reality is, and what a lot of people don't understand is, as creatives, people want to put more of the type of work that they want in their portfolio. So, if that makes sense. If somebody wants to do a lot
Yes.
of travel projects, they're gonna fill their portfolio with travel projects. Now, as somebody who as 2 people that have worked in the industry for a while, I think we understand that there's a whole other group of work that probably doesn't make it into the portfolio that plays a large part of this person's career. It's just not the real visible, glamorous stuff that, they
Mhm.
want to boast about.
Mhm.
So, there's tons of projects
Yeah.
that are not glamorous, but they're profitable, and at the end of the day, that's what helps keep the doors open, the lights on, and all these great projects that could have been shot
Sure.
on
Yeah.
spec, so they were paid nothing, or they spent their own money to shoot it, or they spent every ounce of their budget
So true. Yeah. So
on
true.
creating this concept, this idea, whatever it might be,
Mhm.
and made nothing on it, and that's not how you make a living, all right? So, I think it's easy, and I think it's easy to have a false expectation when you're young and you wanna become a filmmaker, to thinking that it's all gonna be
Mhm.
sunshine and rainbows all the time, and
Sure.
every
Sure.
project is gonna
You're gonna
be.
go out and film these sexy, fun projects all the
Yeah,
time, and they're going to be profitable, and the trajectory of both the creative work that you're doing and your income doing it is just gonna be an upward trend throughout your whole career.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think you have to be realistic, because if you're not realistic and you expect you're gonna be shooting all these great sexy projects all the time, I think you're gonna find yourself disappointed and maybe a little disheartened. So you have to understand, like anything in life, you're gonna have to take on projects that maybe aren't your greatest cup of tea, but if they help you to continue doing what you love, it's important to have other work
Mhm.
in there that
Yeah.
helps all those things happen.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I think we've learned that, um throughout our career. Certainly, we've done plenty of projects. The majority of projects that we do don't make it into our portfolio. We might show them to clients. We might kind of backdoor that with clients. A lot of times, if
Mhm.
say for instance, we have somebody who's looking for a healthcare project, we do have, three or four healthcare pieces in our portfolio that we might backdoor over to them or show them, but they're not going to be front and center on our website. And we've kind of learned to navigate that. Another thing that we do, there's two of us, in this business, this production company, we'll very consistently go to our portfolio and pick our top three pieces that we want to get rid of. It's very good
Mhm.
habit to get into. And what we do is, we both look at it, we each pick our top three. And then if there are any that overlap, it's obvious, like, okay, yeah, we need to get rid of that one. Then we'll discuss any other ones that are up there because, every once in a while there are projects on a portfolio website that you really think should be there that are great for reasons that you enjoy X, Y, and Z about it, and I dislike, a number of elements about it.
Mhm.
So consistently having conversations and figuring out what we think is best to keep up there. But it's a very important thing to be aware of and be thinking about as a creative in any industry, not even just filmmaking, really.
Yeah, it's very easy to fall into the, let's just put all the great things that we've shot
Hmm.
on our website, and before you know it, if there are all these different types of things, you have like a weird smattering of different types of projects that doesn't really showcase you as being a specialist in any one thing, which, a lot of times, if you are trying to grow as a company, you know, whatever the business might be, people always talk about having a niche and really becoming very adept at a particular niche so that you can sell yourselves as a particular company that does this very specific thing. So if you're not careful, somebody might say, "Oh, I don't really know what they do." You
Yeah,
want to be
yeah.
known for
Yeah, and I
something.
think you
Um,
on the one side of the spectrum, you have the people who put too much into their portfolio. It's too broad. It's not specific enough. It's not niche enough. You also have the category of person who is too afraid to put anything out there, and they may suffer from imposter syndrome. They don't think any of their projects are good enough, and you need to find the middle zone between those two kind of extremes, because if you fall into either one of those extremes, you're probably going to have a hard time being particularly successful.
yeah. It's also tough. That just kind of reminded me of something that I feel like we face often when we're pitching a project. It's so difficult because I feel like now so many companies, brands, ad agencies, whatever it might be that you're trying to pitch yourself to for a project, I feel like anymore they are looking that you've done the almost exact same project before. If they're shooting a beer ad or whatever it might be, and the beer ad contains a slow motion, motion control move, they're looking for somebody that has a portfolio specifically with motion control moves in it. And, if you've shot a beer commercial before, it may not be good enough. Like they want to see exactly what they want in your portfolio. So it's always very difficult to know exactly what to put in a
Yeah,
portfolio.
yeah. And who could blame them too if they're spending a lot of money? They want to know that it's going to be spent in a way that's going to, with a company that's gonna get the job done, that's gonna make it happen for them.
Yep.
There are so many production companies out there, especially in the last couple of years, that the competition has just increased significantly in terms of the number of options that clients have to go to, and so, it's a game that you have to be able to play. This game that you have to be able to play
Yeah.
and figure out. Yeah, which brings me to another interesting, kind of angle of looking at this, which is from that client side. If you had to tell, somebody from an ad agency, somebody who is looking to hire a production company, what are some of the misconceptions that you think they might bring to the table when they're looking at a portfolio that we could give them some, I don't know, maybe some advice on or some things to think about when they're looking at
Yeah.
portfolios?
I think I would tell somebody in that position if they go to a production company's website, let's say like ours, and if they don't see exactly what they're looking for on the website, don't discount them or write them off immediately. Like I think it's still worth an email and
Mhm.
to reach out and engage in a conversation because everything that that production company has ever done is not on their website. And they may have that exact piece you're looking for in some sort of back end portfolio that they can instantly shoot over to you and be like, "Oh yeah, we've done this before. It's just not on our website." So
Mhm.
I would say that's a huge thing. Don't discount somebody solely based on their portfolio. It's still worth having a discussion with them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think too, remembering for those individuals looking for, collaborators for projects, remember that, a very massive part of the project is just gonna be the personal side of the project. You're gonna be communicating with these people a ton, you're gonna be going on this creative adventure together, there's gonna be ups, there's gonna be downs, you're gonna have to get into some like, you're gonna have to get in the trenches together in a lot of ways on some of these projects, and so you want a partner that's going to be collaborative, that's gonna be great at communicating, that's going to understand your vision, but also that's going to tell it to you straight at some points in time in terms of, what you're trying to accomplish, whether or not it's doable, whether or not you can execute it well within your
Mhm.
budget, whether or not you have the timeline to accommodate what you want to do. And you need to find a partner who can do all of those things for you, not just who's got the best looking portfolio.
Mhm.
And the only way you're going to probably figure out if they're on a partnership level is by having a conversation. Just start with a conversation, and see how that goes, and you'll get a good sense pretty quickly, I think, of um, what their outlook would be like as a partner for a
So
project.
that's an interesting point too. And I feel like if you're somebody who's a brand manager or a company who's in looking for a production company or creative to work with, I think one of the important things when you're looking for a partner is somebody who is willing to be honest with you
Yeah,
and come to the table. And you don't want to have a yes man all the time. Somebody who's just constantly saying yes
ex
and then unable to deliver on a promise, right? I think
yeah,
if you're looking for a partner, you're looking for someone who is going to be realistic with you and help you get the best result possible, even if it means telling you no in some ways. And I don't just mean saying flat out no, but saying this is why maybe that idea doesn't work, and then offering an alternative that could get you to the same result or somewhere
mhm,
near the
mhm,
same result.
mhm.
So the misconception that I'm trying to tie this to next is that bigger budgets always equal better videos.
Ah, yes, yes. Interesting misconception there that we should unpack a little bit more. Yeah, I would say yes, bigger budgets do not always equal better videos. But they also they can. They really can. There's a lot
Sure.
of things that having a bigger budget can open up for a production. It can increase your storytelling ability. All of the different tools that you have to tell a great story might now be available to you in a way that they just aren't going to be with a smaller budget. The obviously the production value, the production quality, if that's something that's interesting or important to the type of project that you're doing, like that's going to be increased. Um, but bigger budgets do not always mean better videos.
Yeah, I think anybody
I
that's seen
always
a
say
Marvel
that
movie could probably understand that concept.
yeah, there's that to consider too. That's maybe a whole nother discussion. Um, my take is that the best budget for your project is just the best budget for your project, and what I mean when I say that is that you're gonna come to the table with a particular creative idea and a particular outcome that you're looking for from that project. And you need to have the right amount of resources to get that creative idea done and to execute it well. And that's the amount of resources that you want to bring to the project. And you don't need to bring more money than what's required to do that well and hit your end goal, or else you're just wasting your money. And you also really critically don't want to have too little money invested in it because your creative idea could be great, but if you can't execute it well, if you're not given the resources and the tools to execute it well, then it's going to be a bit of a flop and you might as well just find a different creative concept that you can execute well within your budget or tweak your creative concept or
Yeah, I
come up
think
with different ways of making it happen. But I would say on the budget side, that's huge.
yeah, I think understanding and knowing how to place guardrails on a creative idea and just a
Mhm,
concept in general is really important.
mhm.
Um, and then at the same time, I think being realistic when setting those guardrails, but limitations can also really increase creativity.
True.
And you can really end up with some really interesting results when you're like, well, I can't get this particular type of gear or whatever it might be. So maybe we'll shoot it in another interesting way that's cheaper. And
Mhm,
sometimes you'll find yourself coming up with creative solutions that are pretty novel and pretty clever and actually add a lot to the project. Whereas maybe if you had a ton of money and you would have done it in a more traditional sense, it would have just come
mhm.
out a little more bland. So
Yeah,
that's the kind of interesting juxtaposition to having a lot of money, not having a lot of money, and the relation to creativity that could exist.
yeah. Yeah, and another thought that comes to mind, playing off of that a little bit is the idea of like how complex your filming days become. A lot of times when you're pumping more money into a project, you're probably potentially, not all the time, but potentially you're spending that money on more crew, more types of gear, maybe bigger types of gear, maybe a particular specialty piece of equipment that becomes
Mhm.
more and more complex to execute and pull off.
Yeah,
And
you more
what you
need
can
more
see
team
happen,
to run it or
yeah,
whatever it
is
might
that
be.
now
More
you've got
locations.
yeah, now you've got a complexity to your filmmaking team that makes you run a lot slower on your filming days. And maybe you don't have enough time to add a huge budget that's going to make things way more complex. It's better just stay simple to be able to move quickly for particular reasons. Um, and the the whole question of budget is it's a constantly moving target from project to project to project. There's it's really difficult to have or find a cookie cutter way of saying exactly what any particular budget should be without getting into the nitty-gritty of it a little bit. I don't know
Yeah.
if you'd agree with that or not, but I feel like,
I think there's an
that's kind of
interesting
been our
proverb.
experience.
I think it was, Confucius, and I think it was, "Mo money, mo problems."
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little rusty on
Yeah.
my, proverbs, but I think that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Well, anything
What else
else
for
about that
bigger budgets you
misconception?
could yeah, I was just gonna ask you the same thing, so maybe we've come to the end of our road on that one. Let's move on to the next one then,
Alright.
which which was, storytelling. I think we should talk about, storytelling as
Mm.
a
This is gonna be an interesting
misconception.
one because it's such a buzzword
Yeah.
in this industry.
It is, yeah, and it's one that I have mixed feelings about because, look, storytelling is really, 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 really important, and we have gone through some interesting, evolutions with our, I think, approach and take on
Mhm.
storytelling. When we first started working together, we really leaned into a particular kind of storytelling, and,
Yeah, it was a very particular kind,
yeah,
yeah.
and when you look back at our,
Mm.
some of the pieces we worked on at the beginning, you kinda see, like, Eh, the type of storytelling we were doing was probably, to be honest, was probably more appropriate for like a short film or for something that's not in marketing or
Documentary.
advertising, or maybe a documentary, but not like a commercial
Yeah.
because we did lean a little bit into a lot of this like characters who were overcoming adversity and like going through some
Mhm.
like really difficult things and then making it into a 60-second commercial for a credit union. And you get to the end of the
Right.
commercial and you're like, well, that was a little bit of a depressing story for
Yeah, it
a
was a little
credit
heavy, right,
union.
yeah.
And so I think that the evolution that you and I have gone through is to realize like, okay, storytelling is very important, but it's not always the best tool that you have in order to achieve a particular marketing goal. If you're doing commercial productions and your goal is to, get a return on
Sure.
investment for your client, direct response ads or big bold visuals or things that position your company or organization as like a luxury brand or one of the better brands out there, they don't always rely on that traditional kind of storytelling. And so people need to understand what kinds of storytelling are appropriate for what situations and apply it correctly.
Yeah, I think the storytelling that we were kind of involved with very early on was very self-indulgent.
Yes.
We've come to realize
Mhm.
there's more degrees and nuance to storytelling than just focusing on these very specific kind of story arcs that
Mhm.
at the
Mhm.
time I felt like it was everywhere when we were kind of into it. We were even taking courses to help understand how to, you know,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, it was
tell
so
these
huge. I mean,
stories in a
you
better
could
way,
barely
right?
yeah, you could barely spend 10 minutes online anywhere without stumbling across somebody trying to sell you some sort of course on
Yeah, it was a
storytelling. It's still
very
kind of
kind
that
of
way, but yeah.
storytelling was a little bit zeitgeisty. It kind of like very much was just all part of popular filmmaking culture
Yeah,
then.
yeah, and it always
Um,
will be. I mean, it's so important,
yeah,
right? It's not
again,
going
right.
anywhere.
Again,
It's
it's we're not
yeah.
saying it. I guess the misconception that we're saying is that storytelling is everything, but we're
Mhm,
saying, it's still important. It's very important, but there's a lot more nuance to it, and that nuance could be, color schemes. It could be actors blocking. There's so many different little things that you can do to inject storytelling into specifically commercial spots. Because again, if you're talking to documentary and stuff like that, it is still going to be very character driven and story arc driven. But when you get into the
mhm,
commercial space and you have to convey an idea in such a short, punchy way, you start to find more nuanced ways of storytelling than just, you're not going to take somebody through a very complex character arc in a 15-second spot. I also think about some of the food and beverage content that we've
yeah,
done. That does not have a very clear quote unquote
true, true,
storyline,
very
right?
true.
But there is a lot of aspects of visual storytelling in it
Mhm,
when you think about the sets that we built to represent certain cultural influences of the brand, the color schemes, the music. There are a lot of aspects of storytelling to those very
mhm,
short spots. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of pouring shots, it's a lot of mixing shots, and it's not necessarily something that you would traditionally consider a story.
correct. Yeah, yeah. So, alright, I think it's time to move on to our final misconception that we wanna talk
All
about,
right.
which was it's all about the views. It's all about the views, which might be true in
Mm.
Switzerland, but is it true in video production? That's the question. So what do you think?
When you say it's all about views, that makes me think of the idea of like
Mhm,
chasing trends, which is an interesting thing to think about because I wrestle myself with this a lot. As somebody who's a creative, don't you want to be known for something? So should you continuously stick with something or should you always be chasing some trend to stay hip and new? And even if you are chasing that trend, who knows how long by the time it gets to you,
mhm,
trends are a flash in the pan.
mhm.
It may already be kind of over, and now you're just kind of looked at as like the sad person chasing the trend and trying to change
Yeah,
what they do
yeah.
to be popular,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I think you kind of landed at a place that I would agree with, which is that you really have to be careful about chasing the trends or trying to constantly adapt too much to everything else that's around you. And one thing to remember too is that a lot of trends are a little bit cyclical too. So you might maybe your style and approach is not the most sought after style and approach currently, but maybe 5 years down the road it will be. And you'll be the creme de la creme of that type of stylistic approach. And so I think you need to be adaptive within your creative approach to adapt to the changing landscape, but
Mhm.
you have to stay true to yourself in as many ways as you can while staying adaptable. And it depends too on what your end goal with any particular project is. You know, we do a lot of commercial projects. So for us, we just can't go tossing out what's working
Mm.
currently, where the eyeballs are, where the audiences are, what's resonating with them. We have to be able to bring our creative to the table, but then to be adaptable to those items as well. If you're making short films and you're doing it because you just really love doing it, like, screw anything else about it, like, make what you resonate with, enjoy that. And if you're in the commercial world like we are, maybe shoot a passion project that is not tied to a client that can help you explore the types of creative angles that you wanna explore. Um, so I think there's a lot of ways to stay to keep your feet kind of in both camps on that one. But it's a tricky one,
Yeah, and as a
that's for sure.
cinematographer specifically, one of the things that's really important as you're developing yourself and developing a career is kind of developing your own taste and style for things. And I
Yes.
think learning how to carry that style with you throughout all the changes in technology, whatever that might be, whether it's like lensing and shooting a project in anamorphic versus open gate, 3:2 format, like understanding how to still carry your style through to those different things
Mhm.
so that you can be seen as adapting, but also
Yeah,
maintaining your own style and approach to things.
yeah. And I think this is a very interesting thing for just brands or organizations to think about too, because not only us as filmmakers, but brands and organizations are also in the same boat. Like they're
Mm.
consistently putting content out. They have to figure out what their brand voice is, and they have to stay true to that, and they have to bring their recognizable, unique brand voice to everything that they're putting out there. But they have to be adaptable, and they have to be willing to go to some of the places where the eyeballs are, where the people are, where their target audience is hanging out. I mean, TikTok is such a huge, I think, example of this, where there's a very, very specific kind of style and video and approach that tends to be successful on TikTok. And some brands are going to be able to get into that space and do it well, and others it can just be a total failure. And it's probably not the right place for them to be because it's just too far removed from their brand voice. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's not all about chasing the views. It's about staying true to yourself and making sure that you're getting views with the target audience that you wanna be getting the views with. I think there's another interesting point here, which is that views are starting to matter less to algorithms, right?
From what we've been understanding how they're currently working,
Yeah.
it's less
Unpack
about
that a little
views
bit.
now. Mm. Yeah, so it seems that algorithms are actually preferring watch time now over views. And
Mhm.
the reason being, it's all of there's so many people on platforms that are passive users. So they're not liking content, they're not commenting on content. So how do you really
Mhm.
measure if something is successful? And the only way you can really do that is how long are they watching the content? How long did they leave it on their screen? If they watched a
Mhm.
1 minute post for 55 seconds, you know it resonated with that person long enough to capture their attention for that 55 seconds and get them to hang around versus somebody who started watching it for 2 seconds and then flipped onward. So both people did the exact same things, but one person watched it longer. Clearly, it's a metric that is a clue to what is resonating with somebody over others. So platforms have begun to prioritize watch time over views. And it's interesting to see how if that holds, right? Who knows? They change these algorithms so much, but for
Mhm.
right
Mhm.
now, it seems to be all about watch time and less about views.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of begs a question for content creators of any kind, or businesses or organizations or brands that are putting content out there. It's like, would you rather have 1,000 people watch the first 2 seconds of your video and then just keep scrolling on by, or would you rather have 100 people watch 45 seconds of your 60-second spot? And I think the answer is pretty obvious about what you really want. So yeah, view count, you need to be a little bit careful with that one. It's a little bit of a vanity metric in some ways. I think it has been for a lot of years. It's kind of intriguing and interesting to see that um,
The way that's evolved.
nowadays the algorithms are created in such a way that they're actually prioritizing that more too.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all of our
I
misconceptions.
think, yeah, that was everything I had. This was an interesting one. Glad we could do it. Okay, do you have a hot take for me? Because that is what we normally do at the end of the episode. I'm just dying to
Yes.
know if you have one.
Yeah, so today's hot take, director's reels. Are they a good measurement of someone's talent in today's world? Yes or no?
Director's reels are a tough one because it's like um it's like the most distilled, very best items from a person's entire career. So when you're looking at it, you just have to really know what you're looking at. Um, so I don't know. I think they can be effective for some people. I've seen a lot of really great directors' reels or cinematographers' reels that really do capture their essence in an interesting way. And I think for filmmakers, they're maybe valuable because you always have those projects where you get two great shots in this commercial, but the voiceover or the script on it, which was something that was outside of your control maybe, and it got completely butchered, and so you don't wanna show this piece fully on your portfolio, but you got that great shot at 6 seconds. Yeah, the director's reel is a great place to be able to put that in and not have it go totally to waste and just sit on a dusty shelf forever, so that's my take, but you might have a contrary knowing you, I think maybe you have a contrary, opinion on this one.
Yeah, it might be kind of controversial for you to say director's reel is useless, but I don't know. In today's world, I feel like if you're pitching a project, I feel like they are useless.
Mhm.
If you want to tell a story about who you are, maybe a couple things that you've done, I think maybe it's useful. But I think for getting work in today's world,
Yeah.
I think useless.
Useless entirely, man. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think people want to see the end result. They want to
Mhm.
see that you can execute. They don't want to see that you can do one great shot in a commercial. They want to see
Mhm.
that you can pull the whole thing together.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point because the a lot of people out there can have these really snazzy looking directors reels or cinematographer reels, and then you go to look at the actual pieces themselves, and there's just a huge disconnect between the director's reel, which is just a bunch of flashy shots strung together, right? Oftentimes, and actually executing a full project well is a totally different ball game. So I could see that. I think that makes sense.
All right. Well, there's your hot
There you go.
take.
All right. Well, thank you guys for sticking around.
Feel free to argue about it,
Yeah. Let
everyone.
us know what you think. We'd be interested in hearing what you think. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks,
All right.
man.
Well, that's
We'll
it.
catch you on the next one.
Well, so that's it for this episode. I think we're going to try to do another one next week.
Yeah.
Once we get this one, and we'll see you then.
All right. Bye.
All right.
Bye. I don't
See you,
know.
bro.
Am I supposed to say bye?